Greetings and welcome. It is finally time to make the Spies suit. To start off this episode, let me bestow some wisdom upon you. A wise man once said, "The spy main disappears when the job application appears." And coincidentally, I am jobless. But unfortunately, I'm an NG main. So where does that leave me? To restore the order, things we have no choice but to become the spy in real life instead. So I shall do that. Unlike my first tutorial, this one will be about advanced sewing, and I will act under the assumption that you have at least some experience in sewing. I guarantee that by the end of this project, you will suffer nightmares of fabric pinstripes in your sleep. With that disclaimer out of the way, we can tackle the task at hand. To become the spy, we must understand and comprehend the spy. Or in other words, we need to take a good look at the spy and take note of any features. Having said this, no pockets, no buttons, and probably no seam lines since this is just a video game model. As you can see, the spy suit lacks visible buttons and has no outer pockets. And did you pay attention to his lapel? It's quite different from the normal suit lapel, even if not immediately apparent. It goes a bit deeper than usual. The 2 points where the collar and lapel are supposed to meet are a singular piece instead of separate. This collar is essentially a shore lapel disguising as a notch lapel. It's like a skinwalker that took the shape of your dog. At the surface it looks just fine, but once you pay attention, you notice the oddities, the eyes, the strange behavior. When we turn the spy around, we also notice that the hem rises at the front and flares out in the back, forming a low rounded off swallowtail with a slit. The cuffs themselves are kept very plain and don't feature any buttons and slits. When turning back to the front, we notice the next oddity, the spy's vest. Most pictures depicting the spy with just his shirt and vest use this model. But when we compare them, one may notice these aren't the same. The vest that the spy wears under his iconic
$10,000 custom-tailored Louis Crabe Marché jacket
appears to be some asymmetrical strange piece. Now for the spy's pants. The only notable feature is the strange line just a few centimeters next to the center. It's unclear what this is supposed to be. My best guess would be that it is a zipper with laundry protection. The ones you would see often in jeans. These pants also don't feature any visible pockets or waistband. Pockets are, however, a necessity, so I'll just assume they are hidden under the jacket flaps. Also of note, the hem of the pants fell out a bit. With all these features observed, we must consider the fabric. Getting a perfect match is going to be next to impossible. You may find a blue fabric that matches the corresponding spy, but for red it's exceedingly rare. Nobody makes red pinstripe fabric, especially not in these 2 shades of red. However, after much search, I have found these 2 that match closely enough. The first is a dark blue stretch gabardine with white pinstripes. The other one I found is this red knitted cotton flannel with pinstripes. Quite the mouthful, and both fabrics are very stretchy and will require some form of interfacing. For the lining, I'd recommend picking something matching to the main fabric. I found this beautiful paisley lining in both red and blue that I will use. However, you could just as well go for plain blue and red lining. And lastly, for the interfacing, I picked H410 for its reinforced string and H180 for the remaining pieces. I also included some other knickknacks that we will need for our jackets, like shoulder padding, wadding for the press studs, and more. If there's a pattern, there's a path. And if you can't find the exact one, alter an existing one that is close enough to suit your needs. I have these 3 Burda magazines which feature just what I need. A jacket, a vest, and some suit pants that we will alter to get us by. Copy them out of the magazine with your measurements, and now we alter them. This requires a bit of eyeballing and freehand. Using glue stick and spare paper, I extended any edges and the seams that we will later freehand draw the desired shape on. I merged the collar pieces with the front pieces to create this shape and extended the collar and lapel. I am also extending the front piece of the vest with plenty of extra paper to serve as a canvas. And lastly, I cut certain details like the original jacket slip, as we will use a different bond. With that done, we cut out the test pieces. Don't cut any lining, no interfacing, just the bare minimum to get the right shape for the jacket and vest. Don't forget to mark things like dart and center with a tack stitch. Time to sew the prototype. Pro tip: when sewing an outer and inner round edge to each other, hold the outer edge upwards. This will help connect the edges without sewing in any holes. Pro tip 2: Cut into the seam allowance of any strong curve to help the fabric get a smooth finish. Alternatively, you could also shorten the same seam allowance entirely. Here is the prototype. Using chalk and a pencil, I eyeballed the shape of the shawl lapel, and also marked how the vest is supposed to peek out. And with trial and error, I created the vest that we will sew. After you have your pattern, you'll need to draft the lining. It is mostly the same, however there are a few things to consider. Straighten the back for the back piece so it is completely straight and stand by 2 cm. You want to cut this in the lining fold, and subtract the back color piece from the lining back and load out the shoulder left 1 to 5 cm. The lining on the front piece is split between lining fabric and main fabric facing. Using the back fabric lining as a starting point, you draw down until you reach the hem, where we want to maintain 4 cm. This does not include seam allowance. For the arm, lower the center marking by 2 or 1 cm and raise the size by half or 1 cm. Eyeball the curves as good as possible so they sit nicely. The hem is too round for folding the seam allowance up. My apologies if this all seems a bit chaotic. Here are some diagrams to illustrate my point and some instructions if this helps. I will try to provide a scan of the pattern in the near future, so you have a good point of reference. Now we cut the fabric, make sure it's ironed flat and washed. Pay attention to the grain line and the stripes, make sure they align, this will hurt. You can use what I like to call the Shenmue 3 technique by folding the pattern along a grain line with a window snippet and aligning the stripes, then subtly adjusting it for the stripes. Oh, and do you like stripes? Yes? No, it doesn't matter, because by the end of this you will despise them. Here's your first act of masochism. After you've laid out the front piece in a way to closely align it with the Spies front stripes, you will take the side piece and a pencil and mark any point where the stripe meets the pattern. Then you set the next pattern to it and mark these points on the other one. Put that newly marked pattern onto fabric and repeat with the neighboring piece. Now we interface the pieces. Mind you, the lining doesn't need interfacing. Cut them out and iron them on. Make sure the rough side of the interfacing faces the bad side of the fabric, because that rough side is glue. These pieces have been interfaced with 410 and these with 180. And this piece has been reinforced with the plaque. Don't forget to cut the lining, it doesn't require any interfacing. Now we make notches, mark anything of importance for tag stitch, and finish with ironing the plaque on. The pattern is done, but our struggle is not. Now begins the true suffering. Next part we sew the jacket, which is arguably the hardest part, so get ready. If you have taken your pattern from a magazine, then it should come with some instructions that you can use yourself, but I will give you a rough overview over the various steps to do. First we close the back seams, secure the slit with a tag stitch or very long machine stitch, which we will open later. Close the side seam, darts and arm seams, then we close the shoulders. Make sure to do all this with the lining too. And don't forget to close the back fold in the lining like this. While sewing with pieces with patterns together, make sure the lines meet as good as you can. In certain places like the shoulder it is impossible to get it perfect since the back edge is longer, but try where it isn't. Iron any seam allowance apart and iron the arm hem along the tag stitch line. Now we tackle the color. You have to insert this rectangle into the jacket. If you have ever sewn a corner before, you know what to do. Once again, pay attention to the lines and seam. Iron the color seam allowance apart. Now we iron on some extra interfacing bands along the edges of the front and collar as well as the fold line of the lapel. This next step is optional, but I like to iron on this shaping band in the armholes as it makes inserting the arms easier. Now we will handle the lining. Once again, close the side, back, arm and shoulder. This time you will want to iron the allowances towards the back and the front darts towards the center. Now insert the lining arm. After successfully assembling the lining, you will need to do a final thing to take a small lining strip like 4 by 7 cm and sew it into the arm seam allowance like this. You will want these kind of flaps on your lining jacket, as this is important to attach the lining to the jacket. The jacket should look like a skinned spy now.
Help! Some assistance, please! Oh no!
First we connect the extra hem pieces to each other, and then the main facing piece. Then we attach the color facing to it. At the point where the two seams meet, we'll also insert the coat hanger, so once again insert the rectangles. I braided my coat hanger out of spare lining strips. My ancient basket weaving ancestors would be proud. And lastly we connected with the main jacket. This is the final boss of matching stripes. This is what separates the gibbous engineer from the MGE lord. You will suffer, you will struggle, and you will have to rip the seam open and redo any mistakes, but by the end you will emerge a changed person. No longer plebeian, but the Übermensch. When you order takeout and the other side asks you, what would you like to eat? You hang up, because from now on, only you may lead the conversation. After successfully connecting the interfacing, you need to secure the seam allowance. Sew on the fabric side that will be beneath the lapel and secure the seam allowance. Do the same on the front and the hem, but this time on the back, so the stitching isn't visible from the outside. Congratulations, you're almost there. Now we insert the arm. You'll want to get this perfect so that the arms fall straight. Get a long stitch across the arm and pull one of the strings together to create these sorts of ruffles. This will help you fit the edges without squeezing in any folds. Using pins, secure the arms, then saddle stitch to get a loose test fit before sewing it fully in. Or you could do it like me and just ignore all this and go straight to sewing in the arms. Getting it wrong, ripping the seam open, and then using the saddle stitch. This is called the Sisyphean mindset. If the inner arms inserted properly, so they fall nice and flat, we insert the shoulder pads and wadding. Mark the left and right shoulder pad, align the center with the shoulder seam and center, then sew them in. I used special shoulder pads that allow me to use the machine, but you will have to do these things by hand. Then mark the center of the wadding and sew them between the arm and the shoulder seam allowance. By the end you'll end up with this sort of puffy edge, which is so soft and nice and cuddly, and I just want to... Apologies. Now we insert the lining. There's many ways to do this, but here's my method. I attach the armhole to the other side and secure the hem with the Hexenstich. My apologies. I don't know the English names for these hyper-specific terms. With the arms secure, we attach the lining flap on the shoulder with the other shoulders. Now we connect the lining to the main fabric facing. This would also be the opportunity to sew in some pockets into the lining so it can aura farm like a true spy main. I won't explain how to sew the pockets, mainly because the ones that I made turned out really hideous. Just consult one of the many YouTube tutorials instead, please. Now we attach the lining bottom and slit. Open the slit and cut into the lining so the lengths match. Also sew the corners of the slit to the hem. Then we attach them to each other. Secure the lining to the back and the seam allowance and secure the hem with the Hexenstich once more. Now we close the lining by hand with a Staffierstich. Now we attach and press the studs by hand. You did mark where the buttons are supposed to be, right? Right? If not, then measure the length of the front line and calculate where they're supposed to be. And that's it. Clip away any loose threads and finish with some ironing. You should end up with a nice jacket. In my next video I will show you how I made the vest and the pants. These are way easier than the jacket, so if you finish this part, then the next will be a cakewalk.
Pardon me.
Check out my other cosplay videos. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you liked it and want more. If you have any questions, ask in the comments. I am always watching and lurking.